On the morning of June 21st, 1582, Akechi Mitsuhide surrounded his own lord's temple with 13,000 soldiers. He had served Oda Nobunaga for 20 years. He was loyal, he was brilliant. So why did he give the order changed Japan forever? Anyone ever find out? Listen. He served his lord for 20 years without a single act of disloyalty. Then, he destroyed him in a single night. What broke Akechi Mitsuhide? And did anyone ever find out? To understand Mitsuhide's betrayal, you must first understand what he was before it. Akechi Mitsuhide was not a simple soldier. Born around 1528, he was a man of exceptional education, fluent in classical Chinese literature, a skilled poet in the Renga tradition, an expert in tea ceremony and court protocol. He navigated the complex politics of the Sengoku period with unusual sophistication. When he finally entered Oda Nobunaga's service in the 1560s, he was already in his 30s, experienced, refined, and deeply committed to the ideal of loyal service. Under Nobunaga, Mitsuhide thrived. He became one of the inner circle of trusted generals, a small group of exceptional men who actually ran Japan's most powerful military machine. He was given the province of Tamba to govern after a difficult conquest. He built Sakamoto Castle on the shores of Lake Biwa. He served as Nobunaga's chief diplomat with the imperial court, a role that required both intelligence and the kind of social grace few Sengoku generals possessed. He was, by any measure, a success. But serving Oda Nobunaga was not like serving any other lord. Nobunaga was brilliant, visionary, and utterly unpredictable. He humiliated subordinates in public for entertainment. He executed advisors who failed him, including men who had served loyally for years. He had forced the Ashikaga shogun into exile. He had burned the great monastery of Enryakuji with thousands of monks inside. In Nobunaga's service, the distance between valued general and dead man could be traveled in an afternoon. Mitsuhide knew this. He had watched it happen to others. The most documented source of tension between the two men was Nobunaga's habit of public humiliation. Multiple sources record incidents of Nobunaga physically striking or mocking Mitsuhide at banquets and court events. Sometimes before the imperial nobility, Mitsuhide had spent years cultivating. One account describes Nobunaga repeatedly hitting Mitsuhide with his fan during a formal ceremony. Another records a banquet where Nobunaga grabbed Mitsuhide's head and rubbed his face against the floor. For a man of Mitsuhide's cultivation and pride, this was not merely painful. It was the systematic destruction of everything he valued. The most dramatic historical incident came in 1582, just weeks before the betrayal. Nobunaga ordered Mitsuhide to organize an elaborate banquet for the Tokugawa clan leader Ieyasu, who was visiting Kyoto. Mitsuhide spent enormous effort and expense preparing the feast. Then, at the last moment, Nobunaga canceled the assignment and sent Mitsuhide west to support Hashiba Hideyoshi's ongoing campaign against the Mori clan. Without ceremony, without acknowledgement, without even waiting for the banquet he had ordered to occur. The humiliation was precise and complete. There was also the matter of territory. Sometime in the months before the betrayal, Nobunaga had indicated he would take away Mitsuhide's home province of Tamba, the land Mitsuhide had conquered at great cost and built his administrative identity around, and give him a different assignment in a newly conquered region. For Nobunaga, this was standard management, shifting generals to maximize his own strategic position. For Mitsuhide, it was the removal of everything he had built: his home, his income, his people, his legacy. Not punishment, which would at least carry meaning, but arbitrary reorganization. On the night of June 20th, 1582, as he led his army westward toward the campaign Nobunaga had assigned him, Mitsuhide made a stop at the Atago Shrine outside Kyoto. There, he participated in a Renga poetry gathering. The opening verse he composed has become one of the most analyzed lines in Japanese history. Toki wa ima, ame ga shita shiru, satsuki kana. Now is the time when the fifth month rains govern all beneath the sky. The word toki could be read as now, or as the homophone for his own clan name, Toki. And Amegashita Shiru, to govern all beneath the sky, was the classical phrase for ruling Japan. Nobunaga, with his characteristic disregard for personal security, was staying at Honnoji Temple in Kyoto with a minimal guard, perhaps 100 men, mostly servants and personal attendants. He had no reason to expect danger. His armies were in the field, winning. His generals were loyal. Mitsuhide's force of 13,000 was supposed to be marching west. Instead, at some point in the night, Mitsuhide gave orders that reversed their march. They turned back toward Kyoto. He told them the target. His famous words, if he said them, "Teki wa Honnoji ni ari." The enemy is at Honnoji. Before dawn, on June 21st, Mitsuhide's army surrounded Honnoji. Nobunaga was woken by the sound of fighting. He assumed it was a brawl among his own men. When he looked outside and saw the Akechi clan crest on the soldiers' banners, he reportedly said only, "Is this Mitsuhide?" Then he closed the doors and prepared to fight. He was 50 years old, one of the greatest military minds Japan had ever produced, and he was about to die in a temple surrounded by his own general's army. History records that he fought with a spear until wounded, then withdrew and set fire to the building himself. His body was never found. Oda Nobunaga died in the flames of Honnoji on June 21st, 1582. His son Nobutada, who was staying nearby, also died fighting. The man who had unified more of Japan than anyone in a century was gone in a single morning, killed not by a rival warlord or a foreign army, but by one of his own most trusted generals. Japan entered a period of sudden, terrifying uncertainty. For a brief moment, everything Nobunaga had built hung by a thread. And Akechi Mitsuhide, the poet, the diplomat, the 20-year loyal servant, was the most powerful man in Japan. Mitsuhide's triumph lasted 13 days. This duration has become so famous that the period is simply called the 13 Days. He moved quickly, securing Kyoto and attempting to establish political legitimacy through the imperial court, the very institution he had served as Nobunaga's diplomat. But Japan's other great warlords did not pause to negotiate. Hashiba Hideyoshi, who had been besieging the Mori clan in western Japan, received word of Nobunaga's death and made a peace agreement with the Mori in hours. Then he turned his army around and marched back east at a speed that stunned everyone. On July 2nd, 1582, 13 days after Honnoji, Hideyoshi's army met Mitsuhide's at Yamazaki, a narrow valley south of Kyoto. Mitsuhide had fewer troops and less time to prepare. The battle was over in hours. His army broke. Mitsuhide fled northward toward his home territory, accompanied by a dwindling group of survivors. 3 days later, he was killed. According to most accounts, ambushed by a group of peasant bandits on a mountain path. He died in obscurity, stabbed by people who did not know who he was. The man who had held Japan for 13 days ended in a ditch on a mountain road. Japan processed Nobunaga's death with remarkable speed, and Mitsuhide's rule was so brief that it left almost no institutional trace. But the questions Honnoji raised did not disappear. Why had Mitsuhide done it? The humiliation theory, the accumulated insults finally breaking a man's loyalty, was widely accepted. But Mitsuhide was too sophisticated, too strategic to act on emotion alone. Some historians argued he had been planning this for months, perhaps years. Others suggested he acted on a specific opportunity rather than accumulated grievance. No confession, no letter, no clear statement of motive survived. Modern historians have identified at least 5 plausible theories for Mitsuhide's betrayal. And the honest answer is that all of them are probably partially true. The humiliation, real and documented. The land loss, real and documented. The fear of being eliminated, plausible, given Nobunaga's behavior toward others. Political ambition, consistent with his subsequent actions. Opportunity, Nobunaga had never been more exposed. None of these theories contradicts the others. The most psychologically complete answer is that Mitsuhide was a man in an impossible situation, who, when a window opened, chose to go through it, rather than continue waiting for Nobunaga to destroy him by other means. There is one additional theory that has gained academic attention in recent decades, that Mitsuhide was not acting alone, but in coordination with other powerful figures, possibly including members of the imperial court who feared Nobunaga's growing power, or other warlords who saw opportunity in Nobunaga's fall. This theory, if true, would recast Mitsuhide not as a man who snapped under pressure, but as a calculating political actor, executing a plan developed over months. The evidence is circumstantial, but not negligible. The most damaging fact against it: if Mitsuhide had co-conspirators, none of them came to his aid in the 13 days that followed. What is certain is that Akechi Mitsuhide was not a simple villain. Japanese culture has treated him with remarkable complexity. He is not remembered the way traitors usually are, with contempt. He is remembered with something closer to sorrow and understanding. The Akechi clan's symbol, the bellflower, became associated with a particular kind of tragic beauty. Plays, novels, and dramas have consistently portrayed him as a man broken by impossible circumstances, rather than corrupted by ambition. Japan has a long tradition of finding meaning in the noble failure. Mitsuhide fits it precisely. The honest answer to the question of why Akechi Mitsuhide really betrayed Oda Nobunaga is this: we don't know, and we never will. What we know is that a highly intelligent, culturally refined man spent 20 years in loyal service to a brilliant, terrifying master, endured systematic humiliation and professional instability, and then, on one June morning, made a decision that cost him everything: his domain, his army, his life, and changed Japan forever. Whatever his reasons, he saw them clearly enough to act. The Renga poem was composed, the soldiers marched, the torches were lit, and everything that came after, Hideyoshi, Ieyasu, the Edo period, flows from that single morning. Next time on Samurai Chronicles. He was a bureaucrat, not a warrior. He kept the accounts, managed the logistics, followed the rules. Then Toyotomi Hideyoshi died, and Ishida Mitsunari's loyalty turned into something that brought down an era. The man who started the Battle of Sekigahara. If the mystery of Akechi Mitsuhide's betrayal stayed with you, subscribe for new episodes every day. Japan's greatest questions rarely have simple answers, and that is exactly what makes them worth asking.